Okay, today, good morning. We'll continue discussing our chapter here. I think we have page 79. Open your books, page 79. I think we have the last paragraph of the passage, the Lewis and Clark expedition. I think we have not discussed the last paragraph, or paragraph 3. Who would like to read this paragraph? Who would like to read this paragraph? Salsabil?
Yes. The long trip was considered a great success, and Lewis and Clark have been admired for their courage and skill in exploring this vast, unknown territory. Most importantly, they wrote detailed maps and journals describing the western land, peoples, plants, and animals. These journals are still of considerable interest to historians and scientists today. The discoveries of Lewis and Clark helped to increase knowledge of the western territories and led to further exploration and settlement of the United States.
Thank you. Then last time we talked about Lewis and the Clark expedition to explore the West in America, or the American West. So the long trip was considered a great success. Then Lewis and Clark were successful in their trip. It was a long trip. Lewis and Clark have been admired for their courage and skill in exploring this vast unknown territory. Then those people, Lewis and Clark, many people admire them, and they were fond of them because of their courage and the skill in exploring or discovering this big unknown territory, unknown area or place. Most importantly, they wrote detailed maps and journals describing the western land, people, plants, and animals. Something more important is they wrote detailed maps. They made detailed maps and journals. And in these journals and maps, they describe the western land, the land itself, people in this land, plants in this land, and animals in this land. These journals are still of considerable interest to historians and scientists today. So people like historians and scientists are still interested in these journals of Clark and Lewis. The discoveries of Lewis and Clark helped to increase knowledge of the Western territories. Even what Clark and Lewis discovered helped to have a kind of knowledge of the Western areas that those two people discovered. And this also led to further exploration and settlement of the States. Also, this encouraged other people to make further or more exploration and settlements in America. Okay. Now let's go back to the questions here, page 78. Scan the following pages to find the specific information you need to answer these questions. Number 1, Islam.
When did Lewis and Clark begin their expedition? In 1804.
Okay, then when we say when, معناته كأنه time. So we look at the time here. So when did Lewis and Clark begin their expedition? In 1804. Okay, next. Ahmed Nasser.
Who organized the expedition? Dr. Thomas Jefferson.
هنا في عنا هو، إذا في عنا person here. So
yes.
Who organized the expedition? President Thomas Jefferson. Shahid. Go ahead.
Where did the expedition begin? In St. Louis.
Yes, إذا هنا where إذا في عندنا place إذا where did the expedition begin? In St. Louis. Yes, in St. Louis. Next. شاهد. Yes. شاهد سمعتني؟
يا دكتور.
Yeah. Number 4.
Where did it end to the in ocean?
Where did it end?
In the Pacific Ocean.
Pacific Ocean, yes. It ended in the Pacific Ocean. Next.
Yeah.
Next. Muhammad.
What is the name of the Native American woman who helped Lewis and Clark? Dr.
Sacagawea.
Sacagawea.
Sacagawea, yes.
Yes, Doctor.
Safe.
Number 6. How long was their journey? 3 years.
3 years. Next. Islam.
What river did they travel along? عندنا دقيقة. Missouri and Columbia River.
Yes, إذا فينا Missouri and Columbia River. طبعا هنا بالنسبة للquestions هاي كيف how do we find the answers by ايش by scanning the passage. Scanning يعني reading quickly for ايش for clues. لما نقول مثلا when إذا we look for time. When we say who we look for person. When we have where we look for a place. When we have what is the name of a person, so we look at the name. How long we look at what we call the time also. What we look at what things. And these are the questions that can help us to scan the passage and find the answers for these questions. Okay. Now page 80. Open your books, page 80. Skim each paragraph below in order to get a general idea of what's about. Now see if you have enough information to answer the main idea questions that follows. Then go back and read each paragraph carefully in order to answer the three other questions. You may want to scan or for answers to questions that ask for specific pieces of information. هنا في عندنا paragraph. The first thing we should find out the main idea. What do we do when we look for the main idea? We skim the passage. We skim the passage. Skimming means reading the passage quickly to look for for the main idea. Okay, now paragraph 1. Safe.
Paragraph number 1. Tea has had a long and interesting history. The history began over 4,500 years ago. According to legend, tea was accidentally discovered in China in 2737 BC by the Emperor Shen Nung. The story goes that the emperor was sitting under a tree while his servant boiled water. Some leaves from the tree dropped into the water, and Chen Nung decided to try the new drink. He liked the around, he liked the taste, and a new beverage was born. The custom of drinking tea spread to Japan around AD 600. In the 1500th century, tea arrived in Portugal when the Portuguese established trade relation with China. It was then shaped to the Dutch, who in turn sent it to France and the Baltic countries in 1650. Peter Stuyvesant brought tea to the American colonists in New Amsterdam, later called New York. Today, tea is still one of the world's most popular drinks.
Okay. هنا في عنا paragraph. Now we should find out the main idea. Now, what's the main idea in this paragraph?
Can I answer?
Yes, Islam, Saif.
The history of tea is long and interesting.
إذن the main idea here is what? إنه history of tea is long and interesting. Then here we skim the passage. طبعا بالنسبة to other questions, we should scan the passage, looking for what? For specific information. Shahad? Shahad?
Two in the sentence here, like the test and the new beverage was born. The word beverage means drink.
Drink. Then the word beverage means drink. Haneen?
The passage does not mention the number of people who drink tea today.
Yes, then the passage does not mention the number of people who drink tea today. Next, Dana.
Yes,
Dana.
According to the passage, the custom of drinking tea traveled around the world, which list of palace is in the correct order. اللي هي China, Japan, Portugal, French, Baltic countries, American colonies.
إذا هنا في عنا this sentence, which one of in the correct order? طبعا according to the passage. The sentence which has the correct order is number A. The China, Japan, Portugal, France, Baltic countries, and American colonies. Okay. Next paragraph, paragraph 2. Paragraph 2. Ahmed Nasser.
Yes, doctor.
Just read paragraph 2.
The 1917 were a decade of faith and trees. One of the strongest faiths on hit the United States during this time was the petroc in 1975, and advertising executive from California named Gary Dahl created the first petroc. He packaged the petrocs and sold them as gifts. The rocks came in a little box with a straw on the bottom. Every petroc came with its own handbook of training instructions. Like real animal pets, that require a lot of care. The petrocs were easy to take care of. They were quiet, clean, and always well behaved. In only years, millions of people were the proud owners of petrocs, making Daly a millionaire.
Okay.
Doctor,
Thank
question
you.
number one.
Stop here. 1970 were the decade of fads and crazes. We have this were fads. We have this in the previous lessons. Fads and crazes. إذا 1970s had what we call a fad of the fads and crazes. One of the strangest fads to hit the United States during this time was the pit rock. Then became a strange fad called pit rock. Now, in 1975, an advertising executive from California named Gary Dahl created the first pit rock. Then in this year, 1975, advertising executive named Dahl created the first pit rock. And he packaged the pit rocks and sold them as gifts. Then he made them in packages or put them in packages and sold with these as gifts. The rocks came in a little box with a straw on the bottom. And these kind of rocks were put in a little box with a straw on the top, also in the bottom of these pit rocks. Every pit rock came with its own handbook of training instructions. And then every pit rock had what we call instructions, training instructions. Unlike real animals pits that require a lot of care, and this is different from real animals, because real animals pits need care or a lot of care. The pit rocks were easy to take care of, because they are rocks, so it is easy to take care of them. They were quiet, clean, and always well behaved. These kind of pit rocks are always clean and well behaved. In only a year, millions of people were the proud owners of pit rocks. And millions of people bought these kind of rocks and making this person a millionaire. Okay.
Doctor,
Question number? Yes, number one.
What is the main idea of the paragraph? Dr. B, pit rocks were a popular fad in the 1970s.
Then the main idea in this paragraph, pit rocks were popular fad in 1970s.
Yes.
Next. Salsabil.
The word decade in the first sentence means A. The answer C. Period of 10 years.
Yes, then decade means period of 10 years. Next. Haneen.
According of the passage, real animal beats A. Record a lot of care.
Then, according to the passage, real animal pits require a lot of care. Yes. Next. Dana.
Which of the following is not mentioned in the paragraph? One, the price of a pit rock.
Then the price of a pit rock was not mentioned in the paragraph. Paragraph C. Salsabil.
Yes. The internet is changing the travel industry. People are not making their travel plans the way they did in the past. Today, more and more people are using the internet to make travel plans because they want to save time and money. They think they can find the best prices for plane tickets, hotel reservations, and car rentals on the internet. They are looking for online discounts and last-minute deals for their travel plans. Travel is the biggest category of online purchases by US consumers. Studies show that 64 million Americans now research their travel choices online. This is a big jump for 1997 when just 12 million Americans used the internet to make travel plans.
Thank you. Even the internet here is changing the travel industry. Even the internet is very important in changing the travel, and to travel from place to place. People are not making their travel plans the way they did in the past. Even the way that people make their travel plans is different from the past. Today, more and more people are using the internet to make travel plans. Even internet is used here to make travel plans. Why? because they want to save time and money. So they look on the internet and make it travel plans. Why? Because this is what save time and money for those people. They think they can find the best price of plane tickets. When surfing in the internet, they can find good prices for plane tickets if they want to take the plane. Hotel reservations, if you want, for example, to reserve in hotels, and car rentals, if they want to rent a car. So these are what are very easy to find on the internet. They are looking for online discounts. برضو في عنا online discounts, يعني to get you what less prices. And also في عنا last minute deals for their travel plans. ممكن last minute deal you get what cheaper prices. Travel is the biggest category online purchased by US consumers. Then travel is the biggest sector that people use online what we call purchases. Studies show that 64 million American now, they say their travel choices online. So they look for travel plans online. This is a big jump from 1997. Then this is what now is a big jump, and it's a big difference here from 1997. But in 1997, just 12 million Americans use the internet to make travel plans. But now we have 64. And this is what we call a big jump from 1997. Okay. Question number 1. Islam?
What is the main idea of the paragraph? The internet is changing the travel industry.
Yes, then that internet is changing the travel industry. Next. Shahad? Shahad?
The word category in the sixth sentence means group. A.
Group. The category means group. Yes. Yaqeen?
In 1997, how many Americans used the internet to make travel plans? 12 million.
12 million, yes. Next. Next. Saif? Saif?
The paragraph does not mention how people made their travel plans in the past.
Then the paragraph does not mention how people made their travel plans in the past. Yes, good. Page 82. Be an active reader before you read. Discuss these questions with a partner. How do you stay warm when it is cold outside? How do you stay warm when it is cold outside? Salsabil?
Wear cotton clothes and have some hot drinks.
Then wearing heavy clothes. Wearing heavy clothes and maybe drinking hot drinks. Yes. Now, have you ever seen a polar bear in a zoo or on a TV? Have you ever been or have you ever seen a polar bear?
Yes, on TV.
Yes, on TV, yes. Do you know how polar bears stay warm? Do you know how polar bears stay warm and what makes themselves warm? You don't know, or you know?
بالتكيف يا دكتور بس مش عارفين نحكيه.
ها؟
بالتكيف يعني له
adaptation يعني؟ adaptation?
أيوه.
By what? By adaptation. Yes. Right.
Yes.
Now B. Preview and predict. Read the title and subtitle of the article on page 84 and 85. Read the headings in color. Look at the map and photographs. Can you guess what the article will be about? Think of 3 topics that might be discussed in the article. Now let's go forward to the article on page 84, 85. Now, what should we do here? We should look at the title, subtitles, شو كمان, photographs, maps. And from these things, we can guess the main idea of what of the passage. Now, what is the title here? What's the title on page 84?
Peer necessities.
Bare necessities. And does this give you a clear picture about the idea? Does this title give you clear idea about the main idea of the article?
No.
No, good. إذا شو بنسوي هسه؟ We look at the subtitle. There's a subtitle: How polar bears survive the deep freeze. How polar bears survive the deep freeze. Does this give you a clear picture about the main idea? Huh?
Yes.
Yes. Then what can you guess from this what? From this subtitle. What does this subtitle tell you? You know, the passage will be about what? Huh?
About polar bears and how it survived.
How survive what? The deep freeze. طبعا في عندنا pictures هنا. طبعا البيكتشرز في عندنا ايش؟ polar bears. If you look at number 1. في عندنا picture اللي هي الماب. عندنا what do we have in the map here? What does this map show?
Peer. Polar peers.
The map shows us ايش؟ The areas where the polar bear ايش؟ live. إذن the maps tell us where the polar bears live. Okay. طيب. لو رحنا كمان على السبتايتلز هنا. اوكي السبتايتلز هنا subtitles. طبعا subtitle number 1 في عندنا keeping warm. What does this title tell you about the paragraph? يعني paragraph number 2. What does this title tell you when you say keeping warm? What does this paragraph talk about?
Keeps the polar.
How polar bear keeps themselves warm.
Good. إذن paragraph 2 في عندنا subtitle keeping warm. إذن this subtitle tells us that طبعا عندنا main idea of this paragraph إنه how polar bears keep warm. طيب look at the second subtitle cooling off. What does this paragraph tell us? Celine?
How polar bear cooling themselves
off. Then how polar bears cool themselves up. Oh, sorry, off. إذا هنا في عندنا برضو another title, subtitle moving around on ice. Now, what does this subtitle tell us about this paragraph, like paragraph 4? What does this subtitle tell us about the paragraph here, paragraph number 4?
How polar bears moving from place to place?
Maybe how polar bears move from place to place. Or نقدر نقول how moving around an ice make bears warm. How moving around on ice make bears warm. Now the last subtitle in getting out of the cold. What does this paragraph tell us about? What does the title or subtitle tell us about this paragraph, like paragraph 4? Getting out of the cold. What does this paragraph tell us? What does this subtitle tell us about this paragraph? هذا في قلم. What does this subtitle tell us about paragraph number 5? Getting out of the cold. What does this tell us? Yes, Salsabil.
Pregnant females have adapted to the cold by hibernating, sleeping in the winter.
إذا هنا ما نقدرش نقول إنه this paragraph tells us how polar bears get out of the cold. Okay, طيب نرجع لpage 82. إذا هنا we have 3 topics discussed in the passage on the article. From the subtitles we can see this passage or paragraph tells us polar bears keep warm in 3 ways. So number 1, cooling off, moving around, and getting out of cold. These are what? How polar bears keep warm in what? In winter. Now, skim exercise is skim the article to find the number of paragraph that answers each question. Question number 1. How do polar bear keep warm in the cold Arctic environment? Which paragraph tells us or answers this question? Celine?
Paragraph number 2.
Number 2, yes. لأنه هنا في عندنا paragraph 2 إنه له we look at the subtitle here, keeping warm. Then, how do polar bears keep warm in the cold Arctic environment? Paragraph 2. Now, what about number 1? What about question number 2? What do pregnant females do in the winter? Which paragraph? Hamad?
Doctor, paragraph number 5.
5, yes. Then paragraph 5 tells us what pregnant females do in winter. The next question, how do polar bears avoid overheating? Which paragraph? Ataf?
Paragraph 3.
Paragraph number 3. Paragraph number 3. Now, how do polar bears move on ice and swim in icy water? Shahad?
Paragraph number 4.
Paragraph number 4. Good. طبعا the questions here are answered what in the paragraphs of the article. Now let's look now at the vocabulary that we can find in the passage or in the article. The words in the box are bold-faced in the article. Work with a partner and do the exercise that follows. هون في عندنا island. What do you mean by island?
جزيرة.
Yes. Coast.
ساحل.
Yes. Frigid. Frigid.
Cold.
Cold.
Then-
Very cold. Adapted.
Suitable.
مثلا you adapt to the environment يعني you can live in it, especially if it's what harsh environment. Hollow.
Plain.
مرت معنا hollow. What do you mean by hollow?
فارغ أو أجوف.
Yes, empty. Empty.
Empty.
Avoid. To avoid something.
Average.
And not to
تجنب.
do it. Not to do it, yes. Biologist.
عالم أحياء.
Yes. Person who specializes in biology. Sharp.
حاد.
Yes. And the species.
أنواع.
Yes, kind.
Kind.
أنا هذول عندنا words في عندنا idioms. Cope with. What do you mean by cope with?
يتعامل مع.
Yes.
كذا.
يعني able to deal with something. No switch.
No problem.
No problem. Curl up.
To lie with your arms and legs.
Yes. Got it covered.
In control of a situation.
Yes. In control. Yes. Situation. Now, exercise D. Match the words and the phrases in the left column with the correct definitions in the right column. Write the letter of the correct definition. If you need help, read the sentence in the article where the word appears and think about how it is used. Number 1 is done for you. Frigid here means very cold. Next. Islam.
Hollow, having an empty space inside.
Yes. Then having an empty space inside. Next. Dana.
Coast.
Coast.
Coast اللي هي ب the land next to an ocean.
Ocean. The land next to an ocean. Shahad. Shahad.
Island, a piece of land completely surrounded by water.
Surrounded by water, yes.
Surrounded.
Celine.
Adapted with the H changed this to the suit and the environment.
Yeah, and changed to suit the environment. Next. Manar.
Avoid اللي هي to try not to do something.
Then try not to do something. Yes. Next. Next. Shahad.
Sharp, having an edge or point that can cut things easily.
Then edge means, or sharp means, having an edge or point that can cut things easily. Next. Safe.
What's the number, Doctor?
Number 8.
9.
Number 8.
Biologist. E. A scientist who studies living things.
Then the biologist means scientist who studies living things. Next. Manar.
Species اللي هي مع C, a group of animals or plants of the same kind.
And then species means?
C.
Yeah.
A group.
A group of animals or plants of the same kind. Yes, the same kind. Good. طيب. Now هسه في عندنا ايش؟ الإيديومز. Number 1. محمد نصر.
Yes, doctor. One cope with seed to succeed in dealing with a difficult problem.
إذا cope with means succeeding in dealing with difficult problem.
Yes.
Next. Shahad.
Curl up. D. To lie with your arms and legs bent close to your body.
Yes, Kerala. Next. Ataf.
Get it covered. Be in control of a situation.
In control of a situation, yes. Next. Haneen.
No sweet, no problem.
No sweet, sorry, no sweat, no problem, yes. No sweat means no problem, good, yes. Now, set a purpose, set a purpose. Now you are going to read an article about polar bears. Write 2 or 3 questions you would like to answer about polar bears. I'll give an example here. How do polar bears keep warm? What other questions can you put here? And you want these questions to be answered in the article. Shahad? Yes?
مش عارف يا دكتور، يعني بنكتب تعريف البولار بير وتاريخ وجوده في الحياة.
وشو المين ايديا يعني بالارتكل؟ What's the main idea?
What is the polar bear?
No, it's not the main idea. What is the main idea of this article? ماشي طلعنا احنا على التايتل سب تايتل. اسهل سبيل.
How polar bears survive the deep freeze.
This is the main idea. How polar bears survive the deep freeze. Then from this title ممكن نحط ايش questions على article. What kind of questions can you put here? Well, these questions, what will be answered in the article? Do you have any questions to put in what?
What keeps the polar bears in the Arctic deep freeze?
What keeps polar bears? What's the question?
Again.
What
keeps the polar bears in the Arctic deep freeze?
What keeps the polar bears in the very cold weather, for example? ونقدر احنا to make question من subtitles of the article, subtitles.
دكتور نقدر نقول can a polar bear live in a warm environment?
ما بدناش yes no question، بدنا WH questions. اوكي طلعوا على السبتايتلز، من السبتايتلز بنقدر ايش؟ we can make questions. هذا سبيل. فلو طلعنا على cooling off, what kind of question can we put on this subtitle? What question can we put here? Asif.
Where are polar bears found?
No. Now, we're not talking about places here. We talk about how polar bears survive the deep freeze. When we look at cooling off, what kind of question can we make here? We can say, for example, how can polar bears cool off? How can polar bears cool off? You look at another title, for example, moving around on ice. What kind of question can we put here? We can say, for example, how can moving around on ice make polar bears warm? How can moving around on ice make polar bears what? Warm. And this is what kind of questions we can make on this article. Now open your books, page 84. Now, as you read, look for ways polar bears have adapted to their environment. Complete the diagram with 4 main ways as example for each one. Now let's start with paragraph number 1. Would like to read paragraph number 1? Salsabil.
Polar bears are found all around the North Pole on sea ice, inland and coasts. In the polar bear's frigid Arctic home, winter temperatures can fall as low as 45 Celsius. Likely, polar bears are perfectly adapted to live in their frozen, harsh environment.
Okay, now, then we can say polar bears are found all around the North Pole on ice, on sea ice. And where can we find polar bears? Around the North Pole.
On sea ice.
And طبعا sea ice كمان برضو بالislands and coasts. Even polar bears are found around the North Pole, on sea ice, islands and coasts. يعني in these places. In the polar bears frigid Arctic home, تعرفوا ان polar bears live in what? In a frigid يعني very cold. Arctic home طبعا الاركتيك قلنا ايش؟ بالبول North Pole. إذا in the polar bears frigid Arctic home, winter temperature can fall as low as -45. شو يعني minus؟ What do you mean by -45? يعني below 45. Okay. إذا polar bears can live in an environment which has -45 degrees Celsius. إذا -45 5 degrees Celsius. Luckily, polar bears are perfectly adapted. Either polar bears are perfectly adapted to live in this very cold area and harsh environment, a hard environment. Then how can polar bears live in this area? They are adapted. They are perfectly or will adapted to live in such what? In such area. With what? With very cold, frozen and harsh environment. Paragraph 2. Paragraph 2. Muhammad?
Keeping warm. So what keeps the polar bears of society in the Arctic deep freeze? Their best protection from the cold is their thick white fur coat that keeps them warm even on the coldest days. The fur coat has two layers. They're a thick, soft underlayer of fur next to their skin and an outer layer of long, thinner hairs called growth hairs. The growth hairs are hollow tubes like drink straws that direct the sun's rays to the bear's skin.
Mm-hmm.
A polar bear looks white, but under its fur,
Fair, yes.
The skin is black. Dark skin can absorb more heat than light skin, so it helps keep the polar bear warm. Another way, polar bear copes with the cold is with built-in insulation. Polar bears have a layer of blubber or fat under their skin that be more than 4 inch thick. Like other kinds of insulation,
Insulation, yes.
Insulation. Blubber stops heat from getting out. The bear thick fur, dark skin, dark skin, and fat keep it warm in ice water, as well as on land.
Thank you. إذن
Thank you.
on paragraph number 2 في عندنا keeping warm. يعني we can say that paragraph talks about how bears or polar bears keep warm. إذا في عندنا هنا ways that make polar bears warm. No, so what keeps the polar bears so toasty in the Arctic deep frozen? What does this mean? You know, what keeps the polar bears warm in the Arctic deep freeze, in the very cold Arctic? Then, what is their best protection from the cold? Low, thick, white fur coat. What do you mean by fur? What do you mean by fur? Huh? What do you mean by fur?
Thick skin.
شو يعني fur? What do you mean by fur?
اللي هو الفرو يا دكتور.
فرو يس. إذا شو البولار بيرز عندهم؟ عندهم thick white fur coat. It's like a coat. It is thick, okay? Fur. Now this kind of fur, what does it do? Keeps them, طبعا keeps the polar bears from what? حتى في coldest days, okay? إذا احنا قلنا التمبريتشر بتكون minus 45 degrees Celsius. إذا this thick white fur coat keep polar bears warm in the very cold areas. The fur coat has 2 layers. Then what are the components of the fur? It has 2 layers. What do you mean by layers?
طبقات.
Yes. إذا it has 2 layers. طبعا في عندنا first layer, there is a thick soft under layer of fur next to their skin. إذا في عندنا thick soft under layer of fur وين؟ next to their skin, يعني in their skin. And an outer layer, an outer layer يعني from outside. إذا في عندنا under layer or outer layer of long thinner hairs called guard hairs. Then we can say, no, coat has 2, fur coat has 2 layers. The first layer is a thick, soft under layer of fur next to the skin, and an out layer of long, thinner hairs called guard hairs. What do guard hairs do? The guard hairs are hollow and empty. They are hollow tubes, you know tubes. Like drinking straws. The straws that you use when you drink water or juice. Even these guard hairs are hollow. Yani empty from inside. And what do these guard hairs do or tubes do? They direct the sun rays to the bird's skin. It allows the sun heat to go into the bird's skin, يعني to get through to the bird's skin. طبعا the color of the polar bear بيكون white عادة. The polar bears looks white. لكن but under this fur, what does the polar bear have?
Black.
ايش؟ black. إذا under this white fur في عندنا black skin. Okay. On black بيكون dark. So what does this black skin do? Then this black skin is dark. So dark skin can absorb more heat than light skin. Then what does the dark skin do? Absorb. شو يعني absorb more heat? يعني get more heat than light skin. Light skin يعني مثلا نقول white is like light. بينما black is what? Is dark. Okay. So what does this dark skin do? It helps keep the polar bear warm. Okay. And then this dark skin keeps the polar bear warm. And another way which polar bear can keep warm. Then another way, a polar bear copes with the cold. They controls the cold. How? With built-in insulation. Built-in insulation. What do you mean insulation? What do you mean insulation?
العزل.
Yes. Then polar bears have a layer of blubber. Blubber means fat يعني. Then the bear has a layer of blubber أو fat when under the skin. How thick is this layer? It's about more than 4 inches thick. Then it is what? More than 4 inches thick. Like other kinds of insulation, blubber, low fat, stopped heat from getting out. Then this blubber or this heat stops heat from getting out of the bodies of the polar bears. إذا هنا في عندنا layers in the polar bear's skin that prevents the cold to get into the skin of the polar bear. وبنفس الوقت في عندنا insulations أو fat. This layer of that زي ما قلنا عنها in a 4 inches thick شو بتعمل؟ It prevents heat from from getting out of the skins of the polar bears. Okay, either like other kinds of insulation, blubber stops heat from getting out. Even when blubber or fat stops heat from getting out, then polar bears keep the heat what inside in their bodies. The bear's thick fur, dark skin, and fat keep it warm in icy water as well as on land. Then, what makes polar bears warm? في عنا ايش؟ thick fur, dark skin, وfat. These three things keep what? Keep polar bears warm in the icy water. Okay, or on land. إذا في three things هنا that keep the polar bears warm. هم thick fur, dark skin, and fat, or blubber. We call blubber or fat. That keeps what polar bears warm in icy water or on land. Okay. The next paragraph. Next paragraph. Salsabil.
Cooling off. Keeping warm is not sweet for a polar bear. In fact, sometimes its biggest problem is cooling off. Imagine running around outside in a winter coat. Even if it's cold out, you might start to feel too warm and like you in that coat. A polar bear is so well insulated that it can easily become overheated or too hot by moving too fast. But polar bears know how to avoid overheating. For one thing, a polar bear usually moves slowly and doesn't run very often. In addition, it will often grab a mouthful of snow to cool off, says polar bear biologist Francis Messer. Or it might lie flat with its legs extended to expose its stomach directly to the snow, since belly fur isn't as thick.
Thank you. Then keeping warm is no sweat for a polar. يعني keeping warm is not a problem for what? For polar bear. Sometimes it is biggest problem. إذا sometimes the biggest problem is وإيش? Is cooling off. To cool off. Imagine running around outside in a winter coat. يعني suppose that, for example, you are wearing a winter coat and you are running in this coat. حتى even if it's cold out, you might start to feel too warm. You might start to feel too warm. So, and like you, in that coat, a polar bear is so well insulated. Then a polar bear has something like that, and it is well insulated, that the polar bear can easily become overheated. يعني too much heat عنده. أو نقول too يعني overheated يعني too hot. لا, why? لأنه because of moving too fast or too quickly. But polar bears know how to avoid overheating. إذن polar bears know how not to become too hot. What do they do? For one thing, a polar bear usually moves slowly. Then, when you move slowly, you don't get what? You didn't get hot. Then, polar bears move slowly and doesn't run very often. So, when they move slowly and they don't run very often, then they will not be overheated or too hot. In addition, it will often grab a mouthful of snow to cool off. And more often, those bears, what do they do? They eat what we call a mouthful of snow. Why? To cool off, to make themselves cool. طبعا says polar bear biologist Francois Messer. طبعا البيرسون هذا specialized in polar bears. Or it may lie flat with its legs extended to expose its stomach directly to the snow. If these polar bears are too hot, what do? They lie flat with their legs extended to expose its or their stomach direct to the snow, and they get close to the stomach, to the snow. Why? Well, in this case, this makes them what? Cool off. Because the belly fare isn't as thick. Then the belly fare is not much thick, or is not much thick. Then in this case here, we can say that this paragraph talks about how polar bears cool off. Then how do they cool off? By not running and not moving quickly, not moving or running quickly. Another thing, they what? They keep what we call cool off by grabbing a mouthful of snow to cool off. But another way that polar bears use to cool off, lying flat with its legs extended to expose its stomach directly to the snow. In this case, polar bears can avoid overheating or becoming too hot. Okay. Any question about this paragraph? This paragraph talks about how polar bears cool off. How نقدر نقول avoid becoming too hot. Okay, any question about this paragraph? Okay, if you don't have any questions, so we will stop here and see you on Tuesday.
يعطيك العافية دكتور.
عافيك.